Welcome back, everyone. Today we're doing a deep dive into the world of Bill Ackman.
Yeah, he's a fascinating guy, head of Pershing Square Capital Management, known for his bold bets and not afraid to make some noise.
He's kind of hard to pin down, though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he's this Wall Street titan, but then he's also getting involved in all sorts of things like education and social issues.
That's what makes him so interesting to study. Like, where does it all connect?
Fine.
One thing that really seems to drive him is this idea of value investing.
Value investing, okay. So is that something he learned from, like, a mentor or a book or something?
Well, he's a huge fan of Benjamin Graham's The Intelligent Investor. You know that book.
I've heard of it. I'm a little embarrassed to admit I haven't actually gotten around to reading it.
No worries. It's one of those classics that can be a bit dense.
So what's the elevator pitch for the intelligent investor? What's the big takeaway?
It's all about understanding the difference between price and value. Just because something has a certain price tag doesn't mean it's actually worth that much.
Okay, so how does that apply to, like, the stock market?
Imagine the market is kind of like a giant flea market, right? You've got all these different items for sale. Some are overpriced, some are underpriced, and it's your job as the investor to figure out which is which.
Okay, I could see where that would be valuable, huh?
Exactly. Ackman believes that the market can be irrational in the short term. Prices go up and down based on all sorts of things that don't really reflect the true value of a business.
Emotions, hype, all that stuff.
Right. But Ackman is a long-term investor. He believes that eventually the true value of a business will be recognized by the market.
So he's looking for those companies that are, what, like hidden gems, the ones that are worth way more than their current price suggests.
Exactly. He's trying to buy those dollars for 50 cents, as the saying goes.
Okay, so he's got this value investing mindset.
Yeah.
But how does he actually go about finding those undervalued companies?
Well, he looks for businesses with strong fundamentals. Companies that have what he calls a moat.
A moat, like a castle moat.
Yeah, think of it like a competitive advantage that makes it difficult for other companies to, steal market share.
So what would be an example of a moat in the business world?
Well, let's take Chipotle, one of Ackman's most famous investments, right? They've got this incredibly strong brand. People love their food, and they're very loyal.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that.
And they have this very efficient operating model that's really tough to copy. So, it's hard for competitors to come in and steal their customers.
So they're well protected, like a castle with a moat.
Exactly. And that makes them a very attractive investment in the long run.
Okay, so strong moat, undervalued by the market. And then what? Does he just buy a bunch of shares and sit back and wait for the money to roll in?
Well, sometimes. But Ackman is also known for his activist investing approach.
Activist investing. So he's not just a passive investor.
No, he's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He actively tries to improve the companies he invests in.
So he's like, what? A really engaged shareholder? The kind who's not afraid to speak up at the annual meeting?
More like the kind who buys enough shares to get a seat on the board and then starts shaking things up.
So what kind of things would he try to change?
It depends on the company, but it could be anything from pushing for new management to spinning off divisions to even merging with other companies.
Wow, so he's not just looking for undervalued companies. He's looking for companies that he thinks he can actually improve and make more valuable.
Right. He sees himself as a partner in these businesses, and he's not afraid to use his influence to make them better.
So he's not just betting on the company. He's betting on himself and his ability to create value.
Exactly. But like any good investor, he's had his share of wins and losses.
Yeah, I was just thinking that this all sounds very smooth and successful, but I know that's not always the case, right?
You're right. Ackman's career has been marked by some pretty spectacular successes, but
Yeah.
also some really high-profile setbacks.
Well, let's get into those. I'm ready to hear about the highs and the lows.
All right, so where do you want to start, the good or the bad?
Let's start with a win. Give me, like, a classic Ackman success story.
Okay, well, how about his bet against MBIA right before the 2008 financial crisis?
Oh, yeah, that was a big one. Wasn't that when everyone was betting on those mortgage-backed securities and it all kind of blew up?
Yeah, a lot of people lost a lot of money, but Ackman, he saw it coming.
How? I mean, how do you predict something like that?
He did his homework. He was like a detective, piecing together the clues. He started noticing that a lot of these mortgage-backed securities were based on really shaky loans, like loans that people probably weren't going to be able to repay.
So he realized the whole thing was built on a house of cards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he knew it was only a matter of time before it all came crashing down.
So what did he do? Did he just, like, sell all his stocks and hide out in the bunker?
He did the opposite. He bet against the market.
How do you even do that?
He used something called a credit default swap It's basically like an insurance policy on a bond.
Okay.
So if the bond defaults, you get paid. And Ackman, he bought a ton of these credit default swaps on those mortgage-backed securities.
So he was basically betting that they would fail.
Yeah. And when the housing market did collapse, his bet paid off big time.
I bet it did. So that move kind of cemented his reputation as like a contrarian investor, right? The guy who goes against the crowd and wins.
Exactly. He showed that he could see what others were missing, and he wasn't afraid to take a big risk. But that also comes with a downside, you know? Sometimes those risks don't pay off.
Okay, let's talk about the downsides. What's an example of an Ackman bet that, well, didn't go so well?
Well, his investment in Valiant Pharmaceuticals was a pretty big one. It was a pharmaceutical company that grew really fast through a series of acquisitions.
Acquisitions, so they were buying up other companies.
Yeah, and then they would hike up the prices of the drugs they acquired.
That sounds a little, I don't know, aggressive.
It was a controversial strategy, for sure, but Ackman, he saw it as a way to disrupt the pharmaceutical industry.
So he thought they were onto something new.
Yeah, he thought they were a misunderstood company, and he bet big on their continued success.
But it didn't work out that way, did it?
No. It turned out their business model wasn't sustainable. They were relying on a lot of debt to fuel their acquisitions.
So it was risky.
Very risky. And eventually, it all caught up with them. Their stock price plummeted, and Ackman lost billions.
Ouch. That had to hurt. So how did he react to that kind of loss?
You know, it's interesting. He didn't try to hide it. He actually went public and admitted that he had made a mistake.
Wow, that's pretty rare, isn't it? Especially in the world of high finance.
It is. It shows a certain level of, self-awareness that you don't always see in people at that level of success.
So he's willing to admit when he's wrong.
Yeah, and I think that's an important lesson for anyone, really. You know, we all make mistakes. The key is to learn from them.
Okay, so we've seen Ackman as this brilliant investor making these bold bets, but then we also see him making these huge mistakes. So is he a genius or is he reckless?
He's probably a bit of both. He's definitely not afraid to take risks, but he's also incredibly smart and analytical.
So he's a complex guy. But there's another side to Ackman that I want to explore. The side that goes beyond just investing.
Yeah, he's been pretty vocal about some issues that are, outside the realm of Wall Street.
Like what?
Well, he's been a really strong advocate for free speech, particularly on college campuses.
I've heard him talk about that. He's a Harvard guy, right?
Yeah, Harvard alum. And he's been pretty critical of what he sees as a growing trend of intolerance for opposing viewpoints at universities.
That's a pretty hot-button issue these days. I can imagine that's gotten him into some hot water.
It has. He's been accused of being out of touch, of trying to silence certain voices, but he's standing his ground. He argues that free speech is essential for a healthy society, and he's not afraid to defend it, even when it's unpopular.
It's interesting. It's almost like you can see a connection between his investing philosophy and his views on free speech. It's all about challenging the status quo, thinking for yourself, not being afraid to go against the grain.
I think you're onto something there. He definitely seems to be driven by this desire to shake things up, to make a difference. And that's something we see not just in his investing, but also in his personal life. Remember the whole plagiarism scandal with his wife?
Oh, yeah, Neri Oxman. She's an architect and a professor at MIT.
Yeah, brilliant woman. And when these accusations came out against her, Ackman didn't hesitate to defend her. He went public, called the accusations baseless, and really fought hard to clear her name.
And he was right, wasn't he? I mean, those accusations turned out to be false.
They were completely unfounded. But it shows something about Ackman's character, He's incredibly loyal and protective of the people he cares about.
So he's not afraid to fight for what he believes in, whether it's in the boardroom or in his personal life. It's kind of an interesting parallel.
It is. And, that fighting spirit extends to his views on American politics, too.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking we need to talk about that. He's been pretty outspoken about his political views lately.
He has. And he's become a pretty significant donor to certain political candidates.
Like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., right?
Yeah, he's a big supporter of Kennedy. And that's caused quite a stir. But it's kind of classic Ackman, He's drawn to people who are willing to shake things up, challenge the status quo.
Even if it means supporting someone who's shall we say, a little bit outside the mainstream.
Exactly. He's not afraid to go against the grain. But, hey, speaking of going against the grain, we haven't even talked about his battle with Herbalife yet.
Oh, yeah, Herbalife. That was a big one.
There's a legendary battle, one for the Wall Street history books. Okay, so are you ready for the Herbalife story?
Hit me with it.
All right, so Bill Ackman, Wall Street hotshot, he sets his sights on Herbalife.
Herbalife, the nutrition company, the one
Yeah.
with, like, the protein shakes and the weight loss stuff.
Exactly. A multi-level marketing company. But Ackman, he becomes convinced that Herbalife is actually a pyramid scheme.
A pyramid scheme, like illegal.
Well, that was his argument, that they were making more money from recruiting new distributors than they were from actually selling products.
So preying on people.
That's what he believed. He thought it was a predatory business model, and he was determined to expose it.
So what did he do?
He shorted the stock in a big way, like $1 billion big.
Oh, so he was betting that the company would crash.
Yep. And he didn't just, quietly short the stock. He went very public with his accusations.
So like press conferences and stuff.
Press conferences, presentations, research reports. He even hired investigators to dig up dirt on the company.
He was really going after them. So what happened?
Well, Herbalife fought back hard. They denied the accusations, of course. And they had a lot of supporters.
Their distributors.
Yeah, a lot of distributors who believed in the company and its products. And then there was Carl Icahn.
Carl Icahn. Wait, the other billionaire investor.
The one and only. He took the opposite side of Ackman's bet. He bought a bunch of Herbalife stock and publicly defended the company.
Oh, man. So this was like a billionaire showdown.
It was a Wall Street battle for the ages. Ackman versus Icahn. It played out in the media, in the markets, everywhere.
So who won?
Well, it's not a simple answer. The fight went on for years, and it really took a toll on Ackman.
So his bet didn't pay off.
It didn't. Eventually, he had to admit defeat. He closed out his position and took a pretty significant loss.
Wow. I guess even the best investors can be wrong sometimes.
That's the thing about investing. There's always risk involved, and sometimes you just have to know when to fold.
So what do we learn from all this? I mean, we've seen Ackman make these incredible bets, and we've seen him fall flat on his face. What's the takeaway?
I think one of the biggest lessons is that even the smartest people in the room can be wrong, and that it's okay to change your mind, to admit when you've made a mistake.
So it's not about always being right.
No, it's about having the humility to learn and adapt. And I think Ackman, despite all his flaws, he's shown that he's capable of doing that.
He's definitely a complex character, but I think that's what makes him so interesting to study. He's this brilliant investor, but he's also a human being who makes mistakes, who gets into fights, who stands up for what he believes in.
Exactly. He's not just some Wall Street robot. He's a real person with passions and convictions.
Well, it's been a wild ride learning about Bill Ackman. From his investing strategies to his battles with corporate giants to his outspoken views on everything from education to politics. He's a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure.
He keeps things interesting, that's for sure.
He does. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into the world of Bill Ackman, make sure you subscribe to our channel for more. We'll keep bringing you these fascinating stories from the world of finance and beyond.
And who knows, maybe we'll even see Ackman pop up again in a future episode. He's always up to something.
That's the truth. Until next time, everyone, keep diving deep.